Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. My name is AJ Jagannathan. I'm one of the principal group program managers in Azure SQL at Microsoft. And today's topic is Azure SQL, what to use when, as well as updates from the product group. You can also follow us on our Twitter handle at Azure SQL, as well as tweet using the hashtag Azure SQL handle. So what are we going to talk about today? So today we are going to cover three main topics. The first one is Azure SQL offerings, where I'll briefly cover different deployment options in Azure for your SQL workloads. Next, we'll talk about how to use these options and what scenarios, including several customers who are successfully running their workloads on various deployment choices. And finally, we will conclude the session about some of the recent announcements, including some new announcements today, as well as some resources for you to get started. So let's look at the Azure SQL offerings. So here, Azure SQL is a family of SQL Cloud databases. So what do we have as an offer for you? First is infrastructure as a service. Here, SQL Server is running in a virtual machine, which is your own virtual machine, which is deployed on the Azure infrastructure. And everything inside the VM is owned and controlled by you as the customer. It's ideal for applications that require that full level of control. The second is the PaaS platform. Here we have two choices. One is the managed instance. The other one is Azure SQL Database. So what is managed instance? It's a fully managed SQL Server. So unlike the VM where you manage everything, here the entire infrastructure, operating system, as well as the platform is managed by Microsoft. So all you have to do is manage your SQL Server and applications that run on top of that. Also comes with managed instances all the additional PaaS capabilities such as HADR, backups, upgrades, as well as an evergreen version of SQL Server, which is always running the latest and greatest version. And you use this when you need instance level capabilities. The last option is Azure SQL Database. Here, it's a database as a service. So it's ideal for applications which don't need the full-fledged instance, but just need database level programming model. And it's suitable for applications which are also multi-tenant in nature. Whether you pick managed instance or Azure SQL Database, both of them run on the same Azure platform, which provides all the built-in PaaS capabilities I just mentioned. And another advantage, whether you pick IaaS or PaaS, is familiarity with SQL Server Engine. So it's the same SQL Server that are known and loved that you run on premises, on the edge, or on any cloud or hosted environment. It also lets you use the same tools that you're used to, such as SSMS, Azure Data Studio, Visual Studio, SSDT, and various program surface area. And finally, you have complete flexibility in terms of language, development tools, operating systems such as Linux or Windows or Mac or containers, etc. to develop and build your applications and deploy on SQL. So now let's look deeper into some of these. And before I do that, I also want to share with you that GigaOM, one of the analysts, did a recent benchmark study and found that Azure SQL Database or SQL Server on VMs, so whether you choose PaaS or IaaS, runs significantly faster at a very low price, nearly 85 to 86% lower whether you pick VM or whether you pick PaaS compared to other cloud providers like AWS. So definitely there's a huge TCO and ROI if you run your workloads because Azure knows SQL the best. So now let's take a look at when to use what, since you have a good understanding of different deployment choices. So before we get into that, there are different types of applications that we see customers developing on SQL. One, they are migrating existing applications that are running on SQL Server environments in their data centers or other hosted environments. Secondly, customers are looking to modernize some applications by moving to the later versions of SQL Server and taking advantage of some new features. Or finally, we also see customers who are born in the cloud building completely new cloud-born applications. So no matter which option you pick for your applications, the question always starts with two basic questions. First is, what level of control do you need for your environment? And then what type of capabilities does your application desire? So let's look at control. The first one customers ask is, what kind of control will I get? So if you're looking for a fully customer managed environment And if you're looking for full control of all features of SQL Server, some of which are listed here, including the operating system, SQL Server version choice, you want to control your upgrades and patching, as well as host other applications or services such as BI services in the VM, then the right destination for your workload is SQL Server on Azure VMs. If you do not want to manage the environment and let Microsoft worry about it, so you pick one of the Microsoft Managed Platform as a Service options. So as I mentioned previously, we have two choices here. First is full instance as a service, which we also call as managed instance. And you would pick this if your application needs instance level capabilities. Again, some of which are listed here, such as CLR or cross database queries or SQL agent, etc. And you would go there. If you just need a database as a service and your application is designed as a database programming model, then and you don't need the full instance capabilities, you can pick and choose Azure SQL Database. So no matter which PaaS platform you pick, you have multiple tiers within it, such as general purpose, business critical, serverless, and hyperscale, and multiple compute and storage and memory choices, which lets you fine-tune your target size SQL Server for your workloads. Now, here's a slide which goes more in detail about all the different layers of the environment stack. And as you can see here, when you go from VMs to managed instance to database, the different levels of control that you get versus what is managed by Microsoft. On the PaaS side, the main difference between managed instance and database is the instance level features which are available for MI. Other than that, the same PaaS capabilities are provided across both deployment options. Now that you have a good understanding of this, the platform itself, let's take a look at some of the key capabilities of each individual platform. So VM, this is well and known. So here it's the same SQL Server that you're known and used to running in your own environment. And in Azure, Microsoft takes care of the infrastructure, such as compute, storage, and networking. We also released a resource provider recently, which gives you a centralized dashboard experience to manage all your SQL Server VMs from a single place. And it gives you multiple features for simplifying your common manageability tasks like patching or setting up availability groups or doing backups, etc. Also, we give you options to switch your license type easily if you have pay-as-you-go, or if you want to switch to bring your own license, especially if you have enterprise agreement with software assurance and you want to bring your licenses which you've already purchased for your on-prem, but you're migrating them to Azure. This allows you to do that. Plus, we also recently announced free DR on a VM in Azure if you already have an on-prem SQL Server or another SQL Server running in Azure. You get a free DR. And finally, Azure is the only cloud which gives you the free developer edition of SQL Server in VMs. Now, let's take a look at managed instance. So managed instance is a full-blown SQL Server as a fully managed service. So this has the highest compatibility in terms of surface area compared to other deployment choices. And the better part of it is it gives you complete security and network isolation because the instances are injected into the network that you create. So it's all the inbound and outbound security rules, as well as access to the data traffic can be controlled completely by your corporate policies. Plus, you can interact with the service multiple ways, as you can see in the diagram on the right, whether it's connecting from another network through VNet to VNet peering, or if you have an on-premise environment and you want to set up a hybrid topology, you can connect using ExpressRoute or VPN gateway. And no matter which option you choose, Microsoft manages the instances for you, keeps it up to date with the latest and greatest version, evergreen, takes care of the upgrades, patching, backups, HA, etc. And with industry-leading SLAs such as 99.99 built in out of the box. So this means you only have to worry about your applications and you can lift and shift most applications with minimal to no code changes. Now moving on to other deployment choices. On the database as a service, we have the serverless model now. So this is ideal for applications such as line of business applications, which are sporadic or unpredictable usage, and they're not used 24/7. They're used in certain times of the year. Or you may, let's say you're launching a new campaign, such as a holiday marketing campaign or promotions, where you cannot forecast how much the usage will be. Or even like dev test workloads where you're not using the environment 24/7. You want to use it only during business hours and don't have to pay for the service during off-business hours. Serverless is an ideal scenario in those cases. As you can see on the graph on the right, you set your min and max vCores range, and then the service will automatically scale up and down as the workload comes in. And when there's no user workload and the service is idle, we automatically pause the service and stop the compute and take the backup of the database. So you're no longer billed for compute at that point. And when the activity resumes, we automatically start a new compute and bring your databases back online, and your application resumes. This way, you're only paying for your compute when you're using it, with a very highly granular billing model, per second billing, which is the lowest in the industry, as well as very cheap storage. So definitely leverage serverless if you have workloads that meet this criteria. Now moving to our yet another latest and greatest innovations is Hyperscale. Hyperscale really lets you future-proof your innovations, and the architecture enables you to start very small and grow to unlimited scale. You can start with compute as low as 2 vCores and a very small database size, and scale up your compute up to 80 vCores and scale out to up to 4 replicas, and scale out your storage also up to 100 terabytes. As you can see on the architecture on the right, separation of compute and storage enables fast scaling and scaling up and scaling out of compute without impact to the data layer. So there is no size of data movement. Also, you can see that the data is centrally shared by all replicas, so there's no size of data movement. So any data changes on the primary compute are reflected near real time by the central log replay service to the secondary replicas. You also see multiple layers of caching, either in the primary compute, this is the RPPEX box that you see, or on the page servers, which is a fully covered cache of your database. So you minimize the impact on the I/O subsystem because all the reads will be served from either the page server or the local cache on the compute layer. Similarly, writes are asynchronous and cached as soon as it's returned to the log, so the application can continue running with minimal impact for intensive tasks. And also innovations like accelerated database recovery enable the service to start after a failover, or even stop and start very quickly with minimal impact to the user workload. You can read more about it at the link at the bottom. Now let's take a look at some customers who are successfully using this platform for various scenarios. So Komatsu, which is a large manufacturing device and construction equipment maker, they are using SQL Server heavily, and they were looking to migrate to the cloud to optimize because of their use case of using multiple features in the instance. Managed instance was the right platform. So by moving to managed instance, they got 30 to 50% performance gains and similar percentage savings in operational cost and cost reduction. Another customer, HR Blocks, which is a big tax consulting firm, similarly using instance level features, realized immediate value by migrating their tax application to Azure SQL Managed Instance. Cambrain, this is an event management application for reserving and booking camps. Since this is a seasonal app, the usage is unpredictable. In summertime and during certain holiday seasons, their workload spikes, and other times it's less usage. Because of the unpredictable nature of the workload, they found serverless extremely efficient, as well as very significantly saving their costs, but both on the business side and also on the operational side, because since serverless is also built on the same Azure PaaS platform, they don't have to worry about all the automated features that the service provides. Looking at more customers, Paychex, it's another company which has a time management application, and they have multi-tenant SaaS model where they have single database per customers. So to optimize costs, they moved all their customers to elastic pools so they can use shared resources, because all customers will not need the full resource capacity at the same time. So they completely optimize their workload this way and realize huge savings and deliver value to their customers. ClearSale is a fraud detection solution for e-commerce retailers, and they chose Hyperscale because they're seeing significant growth in their business, and they wanted to future-proof their investments for their customers and for themselves. So this ended up being the best platform for their workload. And finally, Benesy is a Japanese digital education provider and had been using on-premises Oracle for many years, but they found value and efficiency in moving to Azure SQL database. So with just a small IT team, they were able to migrate their entire workload from Oracle to Azure SQL and have significant cost savings and operational efficiencies. And we have a lot more customer stories. I have a link in the end of this session where you can look at different customers by industry, vertical, or region, and different deployment choices to see which best match your scenario and learn from how they implemented their solution in Azure. So now moving on to the last section of this presentation, let's talk about some recent updates that we have announced in the product. So before I go through the list, I have a link on the top right, Azure Updates. You can subscribe to that link through an RSS feed to stay up to date, because this is a cloud service. We're continuously releasing updates, so it's one easy way for you to keep up on all the announcements without waiting or missing any important announcements. Also, in the next couple of slides, all the announcements that you see in light blue are the ones that have already happened recently. And anything that you see in white are new announcements that I'm launching today. So again, we have demos for all of this. A link to this is provided later in the end at the getting started slide. So let's start with Managed Instance. This is a service that's been evolving continuously since its launch 3 years back. And here we have categorized some key announcements by themes. So on the application compatibility side, our goal is to make it fully compatible with SQL Server on premises, continuously listening to customer feedback. We recently announced AAD logins and trace flag support. And today I'm announcing the availability of distributed transaction support, ML services, and SSRS catalog. So this allows you to run whether you want to run distributed transaction applications between different databases in the same instance or different instances, you can do that now. If we already have ML services for R and Python and SQL Server, so we're bringing the same capability to Managed Instance. So if you're migrating to the cloud, this gives you a seamless migration path. And finally, for customers who are running SSRS in their environments with their catalog deployed in SQL Server, now they will be able to do that in Managed Instance. Another big feedback area has been around the network connectivity and security aspects. Because it's a public cloud provider, customers want to be rest assured that the endpoints are secure. So we announced some capabilities such as service endpoints and subnet delegation, as well as completely locking down inbound and outbound subnets using this NSG rules, which is automated for you without you having to manually control it. We also have public endpoint support for customers who want to directly connect to the service without having to set up a complex network structure. It's easy and want to get started easily. Today, what we're also launching is global VNet peering. This is really important for customers who want to interconnect different managed instances deployed in different regions around the world without having to go through a complex site-to-site VPN connection or gateway mechanism. On the PaaS side, we continue to evolve. We already launched failover groups, which allows seamless failover between your HA and DR replicas for your application with a transparent failover mechanism and without having to change the connection string. We announced support for bringing your own keys to encrypt your databases using TDE and save the keys in the key vault. Restore of your databases either in the same or different subscription using point-in-time restore, as well as some authentications announcements for AAD. as well as monitoring for managed instance. This is a big feedback area where customers wanted to use Calm to have a central monitoring experience using management packs. What's new today in this area is we have introduced new APIs, whether PowerShell, Commandlet, or REST, where you can test your HA failovers. Customers who want to do HA drills can initiate failovers of their HA replica using this surface area and test how their application resiliency is so that they can build for unexpected failovers. Another big feedback area here was transparency in management operations of the instance, such as when you're creating a new instance, updating the service tier, deleting, giving you better visibility on the progress. So that's available now through new APIs and portal experience. And finally, for backups, we are giving you multiple choices to save costs using compression, which is reduced size, as well as retentions. Like you can reduce the retention up to 1 day now and 0 days for deleted databases. So you can reduce the cost further, as well as customers who have data residency requirements now can save their backups on local redundant storage instead of geo-redundant storage, depending on the business needs. And finally, long-term retention is in preview. So you can, if you have compliance requirements to keep the backups for a longer duration, that's available now. Finally, last but not least, performance is an important area. So we continue to invest there based on customer feedback and learnings. So TempDB improvements, both log and IO improvements for your workloads, whether you're running general purpose or business critical, is something that you will see starting today. Stay tuned here because we have a lot more updates coming up, and you can subscribe to the link above to hear about them. Now moving on to the other new tiers on the database side. Hyperscale, we are launching the preview for GeoDR. So you can set up a DR replica for your hyperscale in a different region of choice, as well as do database copies to other regions. So both are available today. And also we recently announced GA of change tracking, so you can do change feed kind of operations on your database. On the serverless, we increased the limit for the compute to 40 cores now, so you can increase your elasticity from half a core all the way to 40 cores depending on your workloads, and also other options such as auto pause delay, as well as broader API support whether you're using PowerShell or command line. Finally, on the platform side, we announced the availability of private link already, as well as on the database side, we have a resumable index for aborting it. If you paused it, if you don't want to resume it, you can abort it now. We added support for UTF-8 encoding. This was a common ask. And finally, we launched new memory and compute optimized queues, where if you have a high memory workload requirement or a high compute workload requirement, you can get bigger and bigger size hardware for your applications. What's new today is we have new storage redundancy options for your backups, just like what I said for managed instance. In addition to that, for the service itself, now you have zone redundancy for the GP tier, which was already available for a business critical tier. So now we're introducing it for GP tier. And finally, on the security side, we're adding service principal support to create AD users. This was a common ask, along with Azure Active Directory Readers Group for service identities, without having to go through your IT admin to set this up. So it simplifies the overall account management experience for authentication. And last but not least, on the IaaS side with virtual machines, a lot of the existing capabilities we recently announced were the new resource provider. I shared all the new auto management capabilities, license management capabilities that you can enable with the resource provider. So definitely install those. We also announced free HA replica. If you have a VM already as a primary, you can set up a new HA replica for free without having to pay for license. Not only that, you can also pay for a DR replica for free. So you get 2 free VMs for every primary replica. So definitely use that. Also, if you're using, if your SQL Server is on premises, you can set up a free DR replica in the cloud. So this gives you additional resiliency for your disasters. So definitely it's a very powerful benefit. What we are announcing today is availability of failover clustered instance using Azure Shared Disk. So if you are setting up a clustering topology for VMs, you will now be able to use this. And last but not least, a common ask is simplifying the experience to set up availability groups. I know it's not easy. So now you have a very seamless clickable experience in the portal where you can set up and get going with availability groups with minimal friction. So as I conclude this session, key takeaways that you learned today: Azure SQL enables you to take your applications and workloads to the next level. Multiple different deployment options that you heard about, from managed instance to database, and multiple tiers within that, whether it's serverless, hyperscale, general purpose, business critical, or if you don't want to run your own VM, you have multiple choices to based on your workloads. And the best part of it is on the PaaS side, SQL Server is an evergreen SQL. You don't never have to worry about end of support, upgrades, and patching, all the common tasks which is mundane. So you can leave the burden to Microsoft to manage. Not only that, it comes with built-in industry high 4 nines availability SLA that I mentioned out of the box without having to pay extra cost. We are also providing you free services like Intelligent Insights for performance, as well as advanced threat protection and data security using ML-based services which are continuously monitoring your workloads and giving you intelligent insights to optimize them. And finally, leverage new capabilities like serverless and hyperscale, whether you want to optimize costs for intermittent workloads or future-proof your investments for future use for limitless scale. And finally save your money, which is important nowadays, by using benefits like AHub as well as reserved capacity. So with that, get started today. Don't wait anymore. Tons of resources here. We have blogs and training links above, as well as my colleagues recently announced learning courses on Azure SQL Fundamentals, Azure SQL for beginners, as well as deep dive for an advanced user. And for every feature and capabilities that we discussed today, you can go watch the data exposed video. These are bite-sized videos which give you quick learning on various capabilities of the platform. And it doesn't stop there. We have all the business TCO as well as performance studies that analysts like Forrester and GigaOm have published. Definitely leverage that access to learn more on how you can save only with Azure SQL and various deployment choices. And if you want to stay in touch with us and engage with the engineering team, do follow us at Azure SQL Twitter handle and have a conversation with us using the hashtag Azure SQL. Thank you for joining me today. Hope you had a good overview of the various capabilities and when to choose each of them, and looking forward to using them and reaching out to us for any help. Thank you again. All right, bye-bye.